Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a special meeting of the Brant County Council of March the 14th, 2023. Attendance has been taken. Councillor Bell, Councillor Miller, and Councillor Garneau are all zoomed in. Everyone else is here. Can I first of all get approval of the agenda, please? Councillor Pearson, Councillor Coleman. All those in favor of the agenda the way it stands, thank you. Please remind me to, if you see them on the screen with their hand up, I sometimes don't look down there. Declaration of pecuniary interests. Got nothing? There we go. That takes us to number 4 on the agenda, the delegation. We have Sal from MPAC. It's going to do a presentation. Okay, do you want to come to the podium?
I can't hear Councillor Bell.
Okay, we're just trying to hear Councillor Bell. Did we check the other two? It's not usually like this in the county of Brant. We're usually very smooth. It's not seeming very smooth.
Noise, sound.
Okay, I think we're ready to go. We can hear Councillor Bell.
Good, thank you.
Good. If you want to begin, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sal Ferrante. I'm Account Manager, Municipal Stakeholder Relations Team at the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, otherwise known as MPAC. I'd like to first take a minute to congratulate all council members on their successful elections. So I look forward to working with all of you in 2023 and beyond. And whether you're newly elected or a seasoned elected official, please know that we have an entire municipal and stakeholder relations team at MPAC to help answer any questions you may have. To start, municipal relationships are a priority for MPAC and the municipal and stakeholder relations team. We want to continue elevating the municipal and property owner experience. At MPAC, we are Ontario's property experts. Our job is to assess and classify more than 5.5 million properties across Ontario, worth a combined value of over $3 trillion. In the past year, Ontario has grown by over 45,000 residential homes, and in 2022, MPAC added over $37 billion to Ontario's assessment rolls. Every municipality uses our assessments to make informed decisions about their community, and including the distribution of property taxes. Ontario's property tax system and these assessments generate approximately $30 billion in tax revenue annually. So there are 4 key players in Ontario's property assessment and taxation systems, and all have a different role to play in the process. We'll start with the provincial government. The provincial government, and specifically the Ministry of Finance, are responsible for setting assessment taxation legislation and policies. They also determine the education property tax rate. There's also an independent body that adjudicates MPAC's assessed value, and they are known as the Assessment Review Board, or ARB for short. Technology issue?
We've lost our presentation. All right.
So the Assessment Review Board also falls under the jurisdiction of the province. Next is MPAC. MPAC is an independent, not-for-profit corporation funded by all Ontario municipalities. Our role at MPAC is to accurately assess and classify all properties throughout Ontario. We do this in compliance with the Assessment Act and other regulations that are set by the provincial government. MPAC is accountable to the province, municipality, and property taxpayers of Ontario through a board of directors comprised of provincial, municipal, and taxpayer representatives who are all appointed by the Minister of Finance. And municipalities. Municipalities determine their budget requirements. Sorry, I just went ahead there. They determine their budget requirements, set tax rates, and collect property taxes to pay for municipal services such as police, fire, roads, recreation, water, among many others. Municipalities use MPAC's assessments and the established tax rates to distribute their tax requirements to taxpayers. And finally, we have property owners. Property owners pay the property tax bill, and they also set market value through ongoing property transactions. So as you can imagine, maintaining Ontario's property database is very important. Property data is continuously updated so that municipal records are accurate when our municipal stakeholders are making important tax decisions. Maintaining Ontario's property database includes inspecting and assessing new construction, additions, and renovations promptly. We also respond to property owner inquiries and help them to understand their assessments. And we also support municipalities by helping them navigate and understand the services that MPAC provides. And we also provide Municipal Connect, which is our online portal designed for our municipal stakeholders, which they can obtain assessment-related information. And we work collaboratively on projects that are important to you. And in addition, MPAC also has important statutory duties, such as handling requests for reconsiderations and maintaining people data by tracking school support for over 5.5 million properties. Monitoring the market and assessing newly built and renovated properties are things we do every day at MPAC to keep our property data current. We also periodically update every single property assessment in Ontario based on the same legislated valuation date, and we call this an assessment update or reassessment. The valuation date for the most recent assessment update is January 1, 2016, which took effect in 2017. This is when we determine what every single property in Ontario could have reasonably sold for in its current state and condition at a particular point in time. Regular revaluation of properties ensures that assessments stay up to date, and similar properties of similar value within the same community pay similar property taxes. Provincial legislation determines when MPAC conducts each province-wide assessment update, and they also set the valuation date for each assessment update cycle. The reassessment that was scheduled to occur in 2020 was postponed by the province to provide stability and certainty to the people of Ontario and to enable municipalities to focus on the challenges that were posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. As a result, property assessments continue to be based on the legislated valuation date of January 1, 2016. This should have this should not have any negative financial impact on municipality as MPAC continues to maintain and update reassessments to reflect changes such as new construction and improvements to properties. For new buildings or structures, MPAC determines a value as of January 1, 2016 to ensure equity when comparing to existing properties. Ontario's property tax system is based on everyone paying their portion of what it costs to deliver community services. To do this, all properties are assigned a value at a common valuation date as noted in the previous slide. This principle is called current value assessment. This is the price a property might reasonably be expected to sell for if sold by a willing seller to a willing buyer after appropriate time and exposure on the open market. And just to reiterate, while MPAC awaits news from the provincial government about the next province-wide assessment update, January 1, 2016 will continue to be Ontario's legislated valuation date. As noted earlier, this is a fixed date to which all properties in Ontario are to be valued. Although the assessment update remains paused, our work continues to keep property data up to date. Property owners will still receive an updated property assessment notice from MPAC if there are changes to their property. In November, MPAC sent out almost 800,000 notices to reflect changes to properties. Once the province announces when the next assessment update will be and what the valuation date will be, we will be sure to let you know. And then we can work to have meaningful conversations as MPAC works to finalize assessed values within your community. So this slide explains what happens when an assessment update is called. It shows the link between a chosen valuation date, the mailing of MPAC's property assessment notice, and the phase-in, which is bringing the new assessed value of the property into effect over the course of the assessment cycle. The phase-in program was introduced by the province to provide an additional level of property tax stability and predictability. When properties experience a market increase in assessed value between assessment updates, the increase is phased in gradually over the course of 4 years. Any assessment decreases are applied in year 1 of the cycle. So I'd like to talk briefly about valuation. In Ontario, there are 3 industry-wide standardized approaches to valuing property. The first of these approaches is called the direct comparison approach, and this valuation approach is primarily used for residential properties, condominiums, and vacant land. With this approach, MPAC analyzes recent sales of comparable properties that were sold for a similar or identical use as the property to be valued, and this provides an indication of value. It is also important that only valid open market transactions are utilized in this analysis. When we are looking at the valuation of a residential home, our analysis tool considers over 200 factors. However, there are 5 factors that contribute to approximately 85% of a typical home's value. And these factors include the location, site dimensions, exterior square footage, the quality of construction of the home, and the age of the property, which can get adjusted based on any renovations or additions that may have occurred. The next approach is called the income approach. This approach is used for industrial malls, large medical or dental buildings, office buildings, and shopping centers, among others. In income-producing properties, the ability for a property to earn revenue is directly tied to its current value. To value these properties, we need to determine how much revenue the property can generate. So to clarify, it is not the revenue being generated by the occupant, but rather it is the rent that the occupant is paying the landlord that MPAC uses to value properties using the income approach. This method requires a detailed analysis of the income and expenses, both for the property being valued and other similar properties. The income that a property could be expected to generate, as well as an analysis of valid open market sales transactions of those type of properties, are 2 factors that are utilized to create what we call a capitalization rate that helps us determine the property's assessed value. And lastly, we have the cost approach. And this approach is typically used for general purpose industrial properties, small retail properties, gravel pits, and warehousing, among others. This approach is used when the property type is unique and rarely sold on the open market, as we cannot rely on either the direct comparison or income approaches to determine current value due to a lack of data. The cost approach is a 3-step process. First, we calculate the cost of replacing the buildings, structures, or other accessible features on the land. Then we apply a deduction for depreciation based on the age of the property, and we also consider any functional or economic adjustments if there are conditions impacting the value of that property. And finally, we determine the value of the land and add it to the building calculations to get an overall valuation. So what draws MPAC's attention to a property? Typically with one of the following things: a market sale, a request from a municipality or a property owner, building permit activity, or the filing of a request for reconsideration or an assessment appeal. Here I'll provide some information about MPAC's role in the building permit process. So MPAC's role is to take building permits and plans and turn them into assessment. Our municipal stakeholders rely on MPAC's assessments to levy property tax. The sooner MPAC can deliver new assessment, the sooner our municipal stakeholders can realize new property tax revenue. And every year, MPAC processes on average 300,000 building permits for new development or renovations. We are the only organization with a data set of all building permits in Ontario, and our understanding of this data gives us a unique perspective on ways to modernize its collection and exchange to support our municipal partners. So after we assess a property or change an assessment, we mail the property owner a property assessment notice. And sometimes property owners do not agree with the assessed values. And a property owner may even connect with the municipality to let them know that they disagree with MPAC's assessment. However, it is important to remember that property assessments are not taxation. Property owners can visit our online portal, aboutmyproperty.ca, to review the information MPAC has on file regarding their property to ensure all data is accurate. Property owners can also utilize the aboutmyproperty.ca portal to conduct comparable property research on assessed values within the area. If a property owner still disagrees with their assessment, they have the option to file a request for reconsideration. Once filed, MPAC will review the assessment concerns that they've noted free of charge. Property owners also have the ability to file an appeal with the Assessment Review Board. The fastest way to start a review is by filing a request for reconsideration, which can be done through the aboutmyproperty.ca portal or to our public website, www.mpac.ca. Should you or any municipal staff receive any property assessment related inquiries from property taxpayers, I kindly ask that you direct them to call MPAC's Customer Contact Center. Our MPAC contact information can be found on our public site, mpac.ca. So I'd like to spend a moment to address the relationship between property taxes and assessment. Assessments distribute taxes, they do not determine the taxes paid. When a province-wide assessment update occurs, the most important factor is not how much the assessed value of the property has changed, but rather how the assessed value has changed relative to the average change in that same class within that same community. This concept is explained in a recent MPAC toolkit that we had shared with our municipalities. In anticipation of the next province-wide reassessment, we have implemented a strategy to address misconceptions about the relationship between assessed value and taxation, including resources for municipalities that will ensure when an announcement is made, we are ready to provide you the support you require. This digital toolkit, which is available on mpac.ca, can help municipalities mitigate misinformation and provide us support and resources to educate and inform property owners. In the digital toolkit, you can find a new video called How Your Property Taxes Are Calculated based on the assessed value of your home. And I'd like to take the opportunity to show you that video on this slide here. Not sure if there's the volume.
We don't have the ability for sound from the podium.
Oh, we do not?
No.
Okay. I'll move on to the next slide, but all our videos can actually be found on our YouTube page, which I'll explain in a moment here. I would like to take a moment to let you know about MPAC's YouTube page. So MPAC puts together a variety of assessment-related content, such as webinars. MPAC will send out a webinar invite so that our stakeholders have an option to listen to the live event. However, if our stakeholders are unable to attend the live event, our webinars are always posted to MPAC's YouTube channel. You can find a schedule of upcoming webinars and a link to MPAC's YouTube webinar playlist on www.mpac.ca. Recently, on March 9th, MPAC hosted the Farm Tax Incentive Program Overview webinar. And coming up on March 23rd, we have the MPAC 101, Our Role in the Property Tax and Assessment System webinar. MPAC also provides information and updates through a monthly municipal e-newsletter called In Touch. You can subscribe to the InTouch e-newsletter through our website, www.mpact.ca. This is a great way to stay informed and connected. And in closing, please feel free to reach out to me anytime should you have any questions or require any resources. As your local MPAC account representative, I am here to support you and I'm happy to do so. I'd like to thank you all for having me here today and I look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Sal. Are there any questions for the presenter? Councillor Pierce, you're first, and then Councillor House.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, a couple questions if I could. For clarification, when you opened up there, did I hear you say Ontario has 45,000 new homes in 2022?
That's correct. We assessed 45,000 new residential homes in 2022. That is
Okay.
correct.
Thank you. So on the second slide, it talks about property owners, and it says pay property taxes for the community services and education taxes to help fund elementary and secondary schools. My question is, does MPAC have any, I'm going to say, influence on school boards at all? In the sense of, you know, you've got a municipality or you've got a region that's seeing an extreme amount of new builds. Do you have any influence towards the school boards to say you might want to take a look at this area because they might need more schools?
No influence whatsoever. However, we do have data, and in some cases, there are our stakeholders, school boards included, municipalities that will ask us to utilize the data for their own projects, but we're not part of the actual ongoing project. We just provide the actual data to them.
Okay, so we're in the same sense there. We don't have influence on them either. So, and then when you spoke of the assessment goes on age of the property, do heritage homes have a higher value because of the fact they're heritage homes, or is it level across the board?
It's not a specific answer that I can give you about heritage properties. So we collect market data, and so it depends on the specific area and how the market is reacting to certain things. However, we do collect certain variables to address certain features of a home, i.e. like heritage homes. So we understand that in some municipalities, there's various bylaws that limit the type of development that can happen on a residential home or with a heritage status. But I can't really speak specifically if whether or not heritage homes have a different valuation versus other homes in that community.
Okay, thank you. One final one, if I could, Mr. Mayor. You were talking about, you said something along the lines of, I think it was 300,000 building permits for new and renovation. Is that an average every year, or is that just kind of last year's?
That's an average, I believe, over the last couple of years, yes.
Okay, are you able to tell me off the top of your head what percentage of that, obviously the vast majority of them, I hope, are renovations, but are you able to tell me how many of those would be new builds, percentage-wise, roughly?
At this point, no, but I can take that back and definitely provide that to you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor House.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, or Mr. Mayor, for you, to Sal. And I understand that this is a provincial directive on the dates of assessment and reassessment, but I just want to clarify and make sure I understand and make sure anybody who tunes into this understands. So the last assessment was 2016. It was done in 2016 for 2017.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
And then a reassessment was anticipated for 2020. It was deferred because we were in the middle of a pandemic, and I think the provincial government didn't want to hit people with that extra burden or factor. And there isn't one being done right now. So the earliest that it could be done would be 2014 or 2024, right? And which means there'll be at least an 8-year gap between assessments and reassessments, which and 8 years of significant property value increases. So potentially, if somebody had in 2016, if somebody's house was valued at $400,000, it might be valued at $800,000 in the next reassessment. Correct? Potentially.
Potentially, once we look at the market and we determine the assessment values, but we have seen those trends in the media and talking about the market where
Right.
we've experienced a pretty significant increase in markets.
Right, and that would that the reassessment at that time when it does happen would also impact brand new houses because you're assessing brand new builds at the last assessment date, which was 2016.
Correct. So
Right.
yeah, correct. So if we have a brand new home, for example, that was just built this year and
Right.
ready to be assessed, meaning that it has become occupied, our assessment valuation would be reflective as if it was brand new in 2016. So the market at that time.
Right. So everybody, old houses, new houses, everybody is seeing an artificially low impact assessment based because it's 2016, and I'm sure it's in the video, and we're going to be able to send people to your website. But can you give a short version summary again, just to clarify how that when your house goes from an impact valuation of 400,000 to an impact valuation of 800,000, perhaps over an 8 or 9 year span, how that does not directly mean your property taxes to the municipality are going to double as well.
So it's, as I mentioned in one of the slides, it's about how the assessment has changed relative to the assessments of similar properties within the area. So if we take your example of a 100% increase from 400,000 to 800,000, if all properties of, let's say, single family detaches as an example, raised in and around that same percentage increase, then so everybody will pay that similar property tax. However, the actual assessments don't specifically dictate the requirements for the municipalities in regards to running the budget for the particular year. So it's about distributing the taxes and not necessarily doubling because of the assessment. And that's where the toolkit comes in to help property owners understand that difference between assessment and taxation, and then the relationship between the two as well.
Okay, quick follow up, Mr. Mayor, through you. So again, simply put, if it costs $100 million to run a municipality, you're divvying it up over all properties that have increased in value. Like it's not costing twice as much to run the municipality. You're divvying up the cost to run the municipality over a number of assessments that are higher.
Yeah, so MPAC will provide those assessments to the municipalities, and then the municipalities, of course, are responsible for setting the tax rates and determining how to distribute the tax rates amongst the different property tax classes, like residential, industrial, commercial, so on and so forth.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Bell, Councillor Miller? Yep, Councillor Miller?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to the presenter, a couple questions. If there's some question about, say, a new business starts up, and there's questions about the classification, say, is it commercial, is it industrial? Who determines that? Is it the municipality, or does MPAC do that?
So MPAC will define tax classifications based on specific regulations that define it. So it's based on the operations that are occurring or the use of the property itself. So obviously a residential home being used as a residential home will be valued or be classed in the residential tax class. Commercial tax classes, again, are defined in specific regulations, OREG 28298, where based on the assessor's visit to the property, their observations of what's occurring on the property as far as the operations that the property are conducting, we will base it on our legislation to determine what top property class it fits under.
Okay, so follow up. It sounds like it's up to MPAC to determine what the classification would be at the end of the day. Correct?
Well, we do determine it based on our observations going on site and speaking with the property owners or the occupants of those individual properties, but the classifications that we assign are dictated by the actual legislation that's overseen by the provincial government. So we follow the regulations that are noted.
Okay, I'm asking because, I mean, not everything is black and white, right? Sometimes you have on-farm processing, and if they process most of their on-farm stuff, they're still farming. If they process off stuff from offsite, I believe they go commercial or possibly industrial. So that's why I'm asking, because sometimes it comes. There's some there's some issues out there. Not everything's black and white. Second question, how are gravel pits classified? And do you see that changing in the near future?
Well, I'm not 100% too familiar. I know that there was a big case that recently happened through the Assessment Review Board about revaluing or how to value gravel pits. But I can take that back and provide you some further information and detail about that for sure.
Okay, and that's kind of where my question has come from. There's been some recent, I don't know if they're court cases or whatnot, but there's been some changes going on. So I thought you might be up on that. But okay, I guess I'll have to find out on my own. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Chambers?
Yes, through you to the presenter. Just some questions on the theme of municipalities growing their assessment by development. So if you can just follow along with me and tell me where the assessment changes on, for example, if there's a 10-acre parcel of land that's zoned agriculture and designated agriculture in the official plan, then it changes and is designated for industrial. Is there a change in the assessment?
There potentially can be. So there are specific legislative rules around agriculture lands. So even if an agricultural land does change the zoning, in your example,
I'm just first of all, just designated in the official plan. The zoning doesn't change, but the designation in the official plan changes. Is there a change in the assessment?
Depending on the use of that vacant land. If it continues to be farmed, then legislation dictates that we have to continue to classify and value it as a farmland.
Second step, it goes from being designated industrial to being that industrial. What impact on the assessment does that have?
So yeah, so we would be looking at a potential change in the classification of the property as mentioned. So rather than farmland tax classification, we might put it into vacant land industrial tax classification. And then we would also have to relook at the value of the property because essentially it's a different market, as opposed to farmland market, we're looking at potential industrial use land values.
So then,
in case, yes, we would update the assessment values through different means, whether it be through a section 33 or 34, supplementary omitted assessment, or even a year-end update. And we have other means to also do certain in-year changes as well.
I know it's complicated, but I guess generally, if a 10-acre parcel of agricultural land is zoned industrial, there is an increase in the assessment to the municipality.
Potentially there could be,
Potentially, yes. Second step, a building permit is taken out to build a factory on that 10-acre parcel. How does that change the assessment from the land where it's at now?
So from vacant land industrial to a built-on, let's say, factory. So if we're looking at a factory, we're assuming that there's some sort of manufacturing or production being involved. So obviously it starts with the municipality approving a building permit. Once the development itself is complete and commenced to be used, and that's a key feature, that it has to commence to be used. So once it commences to be used, we have our assessors that will go out, collect the information, whether through building permit plans and viewing them physical plans, and also going on site to ensure that what we collect via the plans is accurate. We provide an assessment change due to now assessing the structure of the property that was not previously assessed. And then if we're talking, depending on which classification, whether it be the industrial classification or commercial classification, but of course if it's in manufacturing, it would be industrial, then we would not only just change the land's classification, but we would add the classification to the new building's assessed value as well.
And two more questions, if I might. Going the other way, if I have a 100-acre farm and I've got 8 barns on the farm and changes in what I'm doing, I demolish 5 of the barns. Does that impact the assessment?
Yes, that would impact the assessment. If there's a demolition of accessible structures, then it would definitely impact the assessment. And there are different means on as to how we go about updating it, whether it be a municipal tax application that would have to be filed with the municipality, or we would do a year-end update, things like that. So we would have to have specific legislative means to be able to have it affect at a particular point in time.
It would be up to the property owner to chase down a change in assessment if he has changed the structures on property.
Yes, there is the means of the municipal tax application to get it as effective as of a certain date of demolition. However, being that a permit is taken out for demolition, MPAC receives that permit information. So even without a tax application, MPAC will update the assessment accordingly to reflect that there are demolished structures.
And one final question. During reassessments, like in 2016, can you explain how shifts happen between property classes? Is there shifts between residential properties and agricultural properties as a result of reassessment? And could you just explain that?
Yeah, because of the legislated valuation date as chosen by the province. So at this point in time, it's January 1, 2016. So we look at the market and sales transactions of what we call shoulder years, sales transactions, and group them into those similar property types. So once a reassessment update is announced, depending on when the valuation date will be, we will look at a whole new market. So we don't look at it from a standpoint of saying, how much do we increase from one assessment update to the next? We look at it from a fresh standpoint of a new market value specific to that new valuation date. And the shifts will occur accordingly depending on what happened in the market itself. As we know, it's been somewhat volatile, so it'll be interesting to know what the provincial government does set out as a valuation date. But yes, shifts can occur at varying percentages, but no, we don't apply a shift percentage to the previous assessment. It's a whole new market analysis that we conduct.
Are there any other questions for the presenter? Councillor Kyle.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Sal. Just a quick question of clarification. Just speaking about farms, which one of the approaches do you use for assessing farms?
So farms, I believe, is the direct comparison approach.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. I'm looking for a motion to receive as information for the purpose of training. Councillor Coleman, Councillor Pierce, all those in favor? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now we're going to go in camera. I'd like to call Councillor Bell. You're going to take us in camera?
Yes, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Chambers, County of Brant Council convening camera to participate in an educational or training session.
Thank you. And just before we do that, we're going to take the oath of confidentiality for those of you that aren't in the room with us.
All right, Councillor Bell, Garneau, and Miller. Follows. I understand that this meeting is closed to the public
Okay, we're back in open session. Number 6 on the agenda is the bylaws. Councillor Howes, you have those?
Mr. Mayor, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Kyle, that bylaws 24 to 23 to 37 to 23 be now read a first time.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. You do the second reading for us, please, Councillor Howes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Kyle that bylaws 34 to 23 to 37 to 23 be read a second time and all clauses and preambles be adopted.
Are there any questions to the bylaws? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? And carried. If you could read them for the last time, please, Councillor Howes.
Thank you. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Kyle that bylaws 34-23 to 37-23 be read a third time, passed, signed, and executed.
Thank you. Well, with that being done, that appoints our new CEO, Allison. Oh, we have to vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Allison, that makes you our new CEO officially. You start work hopefully early on the morning of April the 3rd. We'll find you a new desk chair. I'm sure it'll be in your budget. Pick a chair you like. And welcome. We're very excited that you're coming aboard. So, with that being said, we need a motion to adjourn. Yep, we have a motion. We stand adjourned until 6 o'clock.